The dust had unsettled in Caldwell Creek when May Whitfield walked into the Silver Spur Saloon with nothing but a letter in her hand and a prayer on her lips. She was 32 years old and looked 50, weathered by drought and grief and the kind of slow poverty that takes everything except your dignity, and then eventually takes that too. The letter was from the bank. The ranch was gone. She just needed someone to tell her it wasn't true. The saloon was thick with pipe smoke and laughter and men who had never once asked the world for mercy. May approached the bar and asked Earl, the barkeep, whether Sheriff Dunmore had been in. Earl didn't answer. He just tilted his head toward the back table where Dunmore sat with his deputies. Just the way a wind changes before a storm, quiet but certain, she laid the letter on the table. Dunmore read it slowly, then smiled the way a man smiles when he already knew what the letter said because he helped write it. He pushed it back across the table without a word. And that's when Wade Heller, the biggest ranch owner in the county and Dunmore's oldest friend, stood up from his chair and said something so ugly, so deliberate, so designed to break her in front of every man in that room that May felt the words land like stones on her chest. The laughter came fast, not all of it, but enough. May's knees didn't buckle, but her eyes filled. And she turned toward the door because there was nowhere else to turn. Dunmore didn't move. Heller watched with satisfied eyes. Nobody stood. The room held its cruelty like a man holds his breath. Comfortable, easy, practiced. Then a chair scraped back from a corner table. He wore a long brown duster and a hat pulled low, and the left side of his face carried a scar that ran from his jaw to his temple, pink and healed but impossible to ignore. He had been sitting alone with a glass of water, not whiskey, just water, and nobody had paid him any mind because men like that, quiet men with hard eyes and no need for company, were easy to overlook until they weren't. He crossed the room slowly. The laughter died one throat at a time as he walked. He stopped in front of May, still on the floor, and he reached down his hand and said one word. Up, not a command. Not pity either. Something in between, the kind of word spoken by someone who had been on the floor themselves and knew the only thing that mattered in that moment was that someone believed you could stand. May took his hand. She stood. He didn't let go right away. He turned and looked at Dunmore with eyes so steady and so old with knowing that the sheriff actually leaned back in his chair. Then the man reached inside his duster and placed a document on the table beside Dunmore's drink. He said nothing. He didn't have to. It was a federal land deed. And beneath the seal of the county recorder's office, the signature was that of Judge Elias Cole, the only man in 3 territories that Wade Heller owed money to and feared enough to lose sleep over. The deed had been registered that morning. The ranch, disputed through a clause in the original title that the bank had overlooked, still belonged to May Whitfield by law. Nobody in that room knew this man's name. Later, people would ask. Nobody could say for certain. Some said he was a former marshal. Others said he'd been wrongly imprisoned once, that someone like May's father had once done for him what he'd just done for May. Few said he was just a drifter who happened to know the law the way a preacher knows scripture, not for show, but because it had once saved his life. What everyone agreed on was this: he paid for his water, put on his hat, and walked out of the Silver Spur without looking back. And he left behind a room that was very quiet and a woman who was standing upright. It took years to rebuild, but she did. She hired fairly. She grew things. She became someone in Caldwell Creek that people spoke of the way you speak of steady ground, gratefully and often. She never learned his name, but she never forgot the hand or the word or the lesson written into both of them. Unshakable belief that they are worth the effort of standing. That is its own kind of miracle. And miracles, May learned, rarely announce themselves. They just pull up a chair in the corner, order water,